Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Qrow's Corner, the show for a quick review of this week's episode of RWBY. And this week we're talking about episode 4.11, Taking Control, which was released on January 28th, 2017. And as always, there will be spoilers. Fresh off of the emotional cliffhanger last week, we got another jam-packed episode. It opens with Cinder working on her training and recovering from her injuries that she suffered at the fall of Beacon, as well as training to use her maiden power. While she is clearly still very powerful, the injury is taking its toll, and Salem is certainly not a fan of that weakness. She's actually kind of chiding her as she's struggling. But during their exchange, they're interrupted by Tyrion, who returns defeated, penitent, and injured. He reports to Salem that he failed to capture Ruby, but insists that he dealt Qrow a fatal blow, which probably he did. But his hope that she will be forgiving is dashed. Salem is definitely not pleased with his failure one bit. But she does say something interesting, and we don't know exactly what it means, but she says, "The last eye is blinded." I'm guessing that this refers to Qrow, though it could be referring to her favor for him, but I'm assuming more it refers to Qrow, especially as they're attacking Haven. Either way, this sends Tyrion into a crazed fury, which he takes out on a poor, helpless Grimm. This scene gives us little that we don't already know, but it could be setting up for something bigger. Most likely it is setting up for something bigger. We then go back to Patch, where Yang is preparing to leave with her newly painted arm. And as she retrieves her bike, Tai Yang shows up to give her some parting words. He says he didn't tell her she was ready, and actually I agree, since Yang's story was very brief in this volume. But he does mention Ruby's letter and wanting a better goodbye than just a letter. But he also asks her where she's going. Now he knows that Qrow has been telling Yang where to find Raven, and because of the letter, they both know that Ruby is also going toward Haven. So both Raven and Ruby are in Mistral. And this puts Yang at a crossroads. Does she help Ruby, or does she pursue finding Raven, which is obviously something that she feels deeply about? Now, we don't get an answer, but I am guessing that she will go to help Ruby, and I'll explain that in a bit. In Atlas, Weiss makes her escape with a suitcase full of dust, I assume, with some help from Klein. Now, on her way out, she passes her father's office, and Jacques is speaking with General Ironwood. Apparently, Winter is in Mistral, and this is the first mention we get of where Winter is at this point, and she's been sending Ironwood reports about what's going on there. Apparently, there have been some dust and weapons trades that have sparked the interest of the military. We also get the name Leo, who I can only assume is the headmaster of Haven. But Ironwood continues the narrative that his military tactics could have helped prevented the fall of Beacon, and as such, he says he will close Atlas's borders, making him a sort of gatekeeper of Atlas's protection. Now, there's a very brief scene, but this might be the first time we've ever seen fear in Jacques' eyes. He knows he can't buy the general. He's basically at the general's mercy, and there's nothing he can do about it. As Ironwood leaves, Weiss locks the door to make her escape through a hidden passage in the library. Because, of course, this house would have hidden passages, but you're wondering why wouldn't Jacques keep those guarded? Now, Weiss somehow knew beforehand that Winter was in Mistral because that's where she has decided to go, but she's essentially cutting herself off from her family by doing this, but not Klein, because he's great. Back in Menagerie, Sun wakes up to his wound to find Blake watching over him. Now, much like Ruby last week, Blake feels regret for getting people she cares about hurt because of her. Now, she admits that she feels guilty for what happened to Yang, and that's why she ran. And while there's a little bit of self-pity here, you also get the sense that she truly does care about her team. She does love the rest of Team RWBY, and it pained her to run away like she did. But at the same time, she believes that they are better off without her, and that she deserves to be alone. But Sun calls BS on this, and just like Jean last week, he says that they get to make their own choices. And this shows how he cares for her, and he says he will make the choice again to protect her, even if it puts his life at peril again. And pushing them away is doubly painful for them, which is something that Blake definitely needs to hear. And I do believe she takes this to heart. Let's just hope it sticks this time, because again, Yang tried to do the same thing back in Volume 2. And then in Comedy of Errors fashion, Callie comes barreling through the door with Gira. Now, despite her initial anger, Blake finds out quickly why her parents want to speak with her. Apparently, Adam is planning to overthrow the White Fang leader and attack Haven. And while Sun's initial reaction is that he wants to destroy the White Fang, Blake has a more pragmatic approach. Take the White Fang back from Adam. Now, this will definitely be fun to watch to see how she handles Adam this time around. Meanwhile, Ren and Nora race back to Qrow Yuri to help Ruby and Jean, who are in the path of the Nucleavi Grimm. Now when they arrive, Ruby and Jean are still fine, but they hear the roar of the beast. And then somehow this giant Grimm sneaks up on them and rearing its very ugly head. But hey, at least there's some huntsmen and huntresses this time around. I do have to say, though, that this whole episode rubbed me the wrong way for one reason. It forced the progression too quickly. It seems we're in for a big finale fight, but also the rebuilding of Team RWBY. And while that isn't a bad thing, this episode made that inevitable reunion feel forced and abrupt. We didn't get much development or direction toward this threat in Mistral aside from RWBY and Qrow. It doesn't feel organic to have the other three members suddenly pick up and head out to Mistral. We didn't get much of Yang's PTSD throughout this volume, and Weiss had basically no opposition in leaving despite what Jacques said would happen. The only one that makes sense to leave is Blake, but that's because we actually did get more Blake development this season than the other two. When this volume is over, I am going to watch it all in one sitting to try to get the full impact, and maybe it will flow better. But I really felt this episode made an abrupt change to the pace of the volume and just said, okay, now we're ready to send everybody back together. We're going to rebuild RWBY right away. So overall, I'm a little disappointed by how quickly they wrapped up Yang and Weiss's storylines for this volume. I understand their motive. They're probably trying to reunite Team RWBY by the end of this volume. However, at the pace they were going, the ending feels very rushed, like this episode was lightning quick. But no matter what, we are in for what could prove to be an insane final boss fight. But fear not, kids. I'm calling that Team Ranger will be victorious and survive, and Ren will have his revenge. Let me know what you thought of this episode. Was there anything I missed? What did you like or dislike? Tell me your thoughts on what you think is going to show up in the finale. And that does it for this episode of Qrow's Corner, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Nice work. Good job. If you like what you saw, you can just go ahead and click that subscribe button for all videos past and future. You can also head over to my website and see all the other stuff that I do, including the books I've written. So go ahead, click stuff.